Thank you for joining for this episode of the TechSpective podcast. My guest is Jon Aniano. So, Jon, if you could introduce yourself and give a little bit of background.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Jon Aniano here. I am currently SVP of Product at Zendesk. So I run product management for most of what you would consider the Zendesk product. I've been in the customer service and CX space on the product management side, on the engineering side. What I like to say is my entire adult life. So, the last, almost 20 years. And just always been really interested in helping customers, helping teams build great customer experiences for their customers. So, I go as far back as to when, email was a relatively novel channel, and have watched CX trends flow through social messaging, obviously web-based help centers, and all the trends that have come up to us, including what we'll probably spend a little bit of time talking about today, which is AI. If you're not familiar with Zendesk, Zendesk is a SaaS CX vendor. We power billions of customer interactions across a large customer base of 100,000 customers, and we are really invested in just making sure anybody who uses Zendesk can create great customer experiences for their customers, regardless of the channel, regardless of the complexity of their issues. And so just helping people deliver great customer experiences.
Nice. So I will say I have been familiar, I'm familiar with Zendesk for years and years and years. Like it's an established brand. I'm well aware of it, just from a recognition level. And earlier this year, I was in San Francisco, and where between my hotel and where I needed to be, I was, I always had to walk back and forth on Market Street every day, and I was like, oh look, there's Zendesk.
Yeah, absolutely. Zendesk has been in that Market Street location for over, I don't want to get this wrong, but over 10 years, somewhere between 10 and 15 years. And it's just a great flagship for us in San Francisco. We love being sort of part of that community on Market Street.
Yeah. It's interesting when you walk around San Francisco. Listen, if you're not from the Bay Area and you're not in the tech space and you walk around and you just see you pass the Mozilla Firefox office and you're like, oh, it's just this little office on the corner. They make a browser that is used around the world, and they're just in this little office. Or you're just walking down the street like, oh, well, there's LinkedIn. All my LinkedIn stuff is right there in that building. So yeah, that's just kind of.
Yeah, exactly. For the most part, we don't have palaces or compounds or things like that. Although some very large tech companies do, but most of us actually in San Francisco, we're in normal office buildings like everybody else.
Right. Well, as you say, that the one distinct difference being Salesforce Tower.
It's kind of a hybrid. It's a hybrid, compound / office building. So we find ourselves crossing paths with executives from all kinds of companies. In fact, I think we've been able to use some office space in that tower sometimes. So it's just great having access to spaces in the Bay Area. We can bring customers, we can bring our teams from out of town. Obviously everyone's spending a lot of time remote lately, but I find when I go into the office a couple times a week, there's no replacement for that in-person connection, and just having that space and being able to bring customers, partners, our teams into the office has been just a privilege for us. So we're happy to keep doing that.
Well, so let's talk about you alluded to it already, and last week was RSA, and one of the things I've noted from that is that the hot buzzword is AI. Now I will say AI ML have been hot buzzwords for 4, 5, 6 years. I mean, everyone says AI and ML, but now we're doing generative AI. So now everyone's got a whole new take on AI. So obviously that's the hot topic. You've got your Chat GPT, you've got Google Bard, you've got Bing with theirs, and I keep seeing posts on LinkedIn that there's 200 different generative AI tools or API connections or implementations that were created like just in the month of April. So just trying to keep up is a little bit insane right now. But in your industry, from your perspective, what are your thoughts on the impact of generative AI on CX?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, what's been fun for me in CX, having been in the industry for so long, is that every single time there's a new technological change. I already sort of mentioned this a little bit, but there was a time when customer service, at least the time I remember, when customer service was, mostly via phone or in person, right? The internet came and we said, well, we could do some of that on the web or some of that over email. Social messaging came and social channels showed up, and we said, okay, well, every time human behavior changes, every time humans change the way they communicate or change their expectations of the types of conversations they're going to have, well, guess what? CX technology and CX processes have to keep up, because when you're delivering customer experiences, you're in the business of having conversations with people and helping people solve their problems. And so you're going to have to do that on the mode of preference. I often, when I talk about, the shift to messaging, for instance, which has happened in the last 5 years, I often say, when I started realizing that I was interacting with my grandmother over Facebook Messenger, that, the shift to messaging-based applications or messaging-based communication had really hit across, a wide swath of humanity. So as people change the way they communicate, and the technology that they use to communicate, CX has to follow. With AI, we've had a few false starts, right? So, in the early to mid 2000s, there was a lot of sort of talk of the virtual assistant or the virtual agent, and it was using early AI technologies. We've had a lot of false starts with natural language processing of audio in phone-based customer service systems. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So I've seen a lot of hype cycles for AI. I think for me, this one is different. So when we talk about generative AI, when we talk about the use of large language models, if you've ever spent any time with, just interacting with ChatGPT, and I'm not even talking about, we have a bleeding edge which changes every week nowadays. I'm not talking about, GPT-4 or Auto GPT or whatever the case may be. But if you've spent any time at all with ChatGPT, which has been available to the public for, maybe 6 months now or maybe less, you realize that the ability for these large language models to generate answers to questions will have a massive impact on the CX industry. But even things that are not direct answers to questions, like summarizing massive amounts of information or helping people write responses, changing text, editing text, updating text, suggesting text. These are things that are ready to have a massive impact on CX. So that's definitely happening. And I think, what's been really great for us at Zendesk, and I know I'm going long on this, but just want to give you the thoughts here. What's great for us at Zendesk is that we got to this early. We didn't wake up in December when ChatGPT showed up and say, oh, how do we use this for CX? We had the opportunity to acquire a company called Cleverly about 1.5 years ago. And that team was already on the forefront of saying, okay, these large language models have been out for a couple of years. They're going to get bigger. They're going to get better. They're going to get faster. They're going to get cheaper. How do we make these things work for CX specifically? Because frankly, I wouldn't put ChatGPT in front of one of my customers today and just say, hey, here's a bunch of information about my company. Talk to my customer. CX is more nuanced than that. It's harder than that. There's policies and processes in place. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. And the worst thing you want to do is give your customer a wrong answer. And the large language models today are pretty good at generating convincing wrong answers. And
yes, they are.
And so what we decided to do is say, look, let's train a large language model with all of the billions of CX data points that we have that we can feed into these systems and start getting insights that we know can be accurate. Can we pull the customer's intent out of this? Can we pull the sentiment of the customer? And CX sentiment is different from other sentiments. So how do we train it on CX data? How do we take the richness of this data, put it into a large language model, and get insights out of it? And so that's why the work over the last 18 months on Zendesk AI has been so fruitful is we started from the position of large language models are going to change the world. How do we make sure that Zendesk helps our customers deliver that stuff quickly?
Well, so you made the point about that generative AI is sometimes good at making very convincing wrong answers, and that's actually something I'm working on an article on that, because I had some back and forth with a friend who writes for a different tech publication, and he was playing around, and he went out and he asked ChatGPT for an answer to a question that he knew going in that the only place ChatGPT could get the answer to the question was an article he wrote. Like it was that new of a topic.
Yeah.
And it did, and it basically plagiarized his entire thing. Didn't give him any credit, and he calls it. It's funny because he's having this conversation with this AI that is not a conscious thing, but he's like, hey, did you plagiarize this? And ChatGPT was like, yeah, sorry.
Oh,
but
man.
But then that sparked for me to like go out and say, well, wait a minute, let me go play around with this. And I said, one of my, and this a little bit off topic from the CX side, but one of my big issues from a content side with generative AI is the lack of citing a source. Like if you give me an answer, that's great, give me the answer, but give me the info to verify the answer as well. And it doesn't do that. So I started asking ChatGPT things like, hey, go answer this question, but also cite your sources. And go answer this question. Also, make sure you quote people who know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
The thing is, it did it, but it made it up. It invented quotes that did not exist, attributed them to actual people, actual executives. It would say like, Satya Nadella said blah, 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 even though there's no record on the entire internet of him ever saying that.
Yep.
And then it would say, it would include a link that says, we're citing this NBC News article or this Bloomberg article, and it was an actual link with the actual URL. And when you click on it, it goes to a 404, this page does not exist error. And I was like, this is insane. Like I asked you to cite your sources and you just made stuff up.
Well, it did what you asked it to do. So yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? Is it's early days for all this stuff, and do I think on the like medium term horizon, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, it's hard to predict years on stuff that has such a iterative bleeding edge, but I think these are solvable problems, but they are not solved today. And so in CX, the citation problem is real, right? If you let a machine give an answer to a customer and it comes out of the knowledge base, and you can cite that knowledge base article, and you can say, look, if you want more information, come here. That would be super helpful. We have the opposite of the plagiarism problem. In CX, we want the information that comes from the system, from AI, to have its source in reality, to have its source in some corpus of knowledge, or have its source in information that a customer service agent would normally say. But we have to make sure we know where that information came from, and we have to make sure that the AI has the context, because you could generate a really good answer for a customer in the US that has no applicability to a customer in Europe or in
right.
or in APAC. And so when we as humans, and we're testing out ChatGPT or similarly open public AI systems, we tend to ask things that are sort of that we sort of know the answer to, and we kind of give it the context it needs. But in customer service interactions, we have to have a way to say, these types of customers who are specified by their the region they're contacting us from, the types of products they own, their history with the company, we need to provide them a different type of answer. And so having that context is what a lot of our work has been, what a lot of what we've been working on in Zendesk AI is to say, okay, we have a large language model. It can receive input and give output better than anything before. But how do we make sure that it gets all the right input and gives a pretty confident output? And what we're finding, by the way, right now is we are not recommending our customers put completely generated content in front of their customers in CX interactions. We are recommending that right now, in the short term, in the year 2023 and probably 2024, you're going to want a human in the loop on that stuff. You have great customer service agents that interact with your customers, that you trust, that you can inspect and train, and have been doing this for a very long time and are experts. Let them review what the system is generating. Let them use their human instincts to double check this stuff before we start putting completely generated answers in front of customers automatically. And I think that's something we're, in our industry, in the CX industry, we're going to be dealing with for a couple of years here as AI comes up.
Yeah, makes sense. So, on the one hand, when I start to see the stuff about generative AI, one of my first thoughts is sort of, well, that's what I thought we were trying to do with Siri and Alexa, and it's just a voice version of that. Like I ask a question in plain English and you give me an answer. It is an evolution of that, but I will say at this point in time, I find Siri to be really disappointing in that regard, because I feel like most of the questions I ask, it doesn't really have an answer for, or it'll just say, hey, here's this Wikipedia article I found, and it won't even say it out loud. Like I'm having a conversation with a HomePod, and it's like, well, we sent a link to your phone. I'm like, I could have looked it up on my phone myself. That's not helpful. I wanted you to tell me what the answer was. But from an AI, from a CX perspective, though, I feel like we have human customer service agents, and then we've had a generation of chatbots, and the chatbots are generally not that useful. And I feel like this is an opportunity to improve that process. And I also feel like, and I'm not trying to put anyone out of work, but I feel like level 1 customer service doesn't generally know anything I don't know. Like, when I call UPS or something and I say, hey, I'm missing this package, all they do is pull up the same screen I'm looking at, and they say, well, it says that it's in, Kansas City. I'm like, I know that. I want you to tell me why, and when is it going to get here? And so I feel like that is also an area where, like, you could definitely offload that to offload that part to AI, because it's like you're just citing known information and you're just following a predetermined flow chart of questions. And it's like, okay, well, you can use AI to get through that predetermined flow chart, and when you get to the part where the flow chart runs out, hand it off to a human.
Yeah, absolutely. So you made a couple of points there. I want to try to respond to them in reverse order, because the last point about that job of the tier 1 customer service agent is really important, because I spend a lot of time with customer service agents, with customer service teams, with customer service managers, and I can tell you from their side, those tier 1 jobs, which are really about triaging and routing tickets and or deflecting tickets, those are not fulfilling jobs for human beings, right? And the opportunity here is to say, what are the manual or repetitive or non-rewarding jobs in the CX industry? How can we offload some of that to automation and AI, but use those people who are valuable humans, who truly care, who want to help, who have the skills and the access to information to go and really solve customers' problems, and just move them up the stack a little bit, right? And just say, look, the way I think about it quite a bit in the industry is that, if you look at customer service supply and demand continues to grow faster than supply, faster than our ability to deliver customer experiences or deliver answer to our customers. And demand is going to continue to grow. Consumers become more demanding, they buy more products, the world gets more complicated. There are more customer service issues every year, year after year. And so when we talk about automating parts of the jobs that exist today, I think what we're really saying is we're serving the demand, the simple demand, through machine learning and AI, and that demand, which is going to continue to grow for human intelligence, human interaction, emotional support, more complex scenarios, we're going to use that those people who are doing tier 1 work to do tier 2 and higher work, And we're going to realize if we open up the capacity for tier 2 and higher work, we're actually delivering better customer experiences across the whole curve of CX interactions. So I see a lot of that absolutely happening, and I think that's a great thing for the industry. It's a great thing for the job of a customer service agent to be able to say, our systems can understand what a customer is asking about, give them the information that's available in our systems today, and route the customer service issue to a proper escalation channel or to a proper person if they actually need help from a human. That's going to be huge. That is what's going to transform a lot of the CX jobs today. Going back to your point about Siri, I think you're seeing exactly what we're seeing when we look at companies and CX vendors, frankly, who are taking a look at these LLMs and saying, oh, this is it. This is the solution to the problem. We just take the questions, we put them in the LLM, and then we see what the LLM says, and that's the answer to the customer. Siri can't do customer service for you because it doesn't have all of your context about your relationship with the company, and it doesn't have the company's business processes, knowledge, history, access to their internal systems. It doesn't have that information. So in order to make a good Siri or Alexa for CX, you have to provide CX specific interactions to the LLM, customer data, and business process information so that the system can respond quickly. The bots are getting better because we can now better understand what a customer is asking for and get them to the right answer. If we throw those concepts away and just say, well, we'll just generate the answers out of, I don't know, a large language model, you end up creating the scenario that you were talking about at the beginning of your question.
Well, and on the topic of sort of like false starts, I feel like when it comes to those things, there's a lot of potential there, and there were a lot of claims made early on that I don't think it's lived up to, and there's no reason they still can't achieve it, but they haven't really tried. I feel like they're all kind of stalled out. They're like, all right, we launched these things, they're fine now. But ultimately, and what I want from a Siri is, over time, my Siri should be different than your Siri. My Siri should know what restaurants I like. It should know it knows my health information. Like it should know all these things. It should be like Jarvis in Iron Man. Yeah. It should know exactly what I think, how I like things, and it should be giving me information based on that, like proactively, intuitively, even without me asking on occasion. So that's aspirationally, that's what I want Siri to be. And I think that there's the Siri that comes out of the box when you get a brand new device and you haven't done anything.
Yep.
But over time, that algorithm should be customized to you.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think a lot of consumers that I work with, and even some of the businesses I work with, are thinking about that future in a way, which is like, if I I don't want to figure out how to contact my airline in order to get a question answered by them. I want to just offload that to an AI, like Siri. Like, hey Siri, tell me, like, I need my seat moved to a window seat. I forgot to do that last week, but it just popped into my head. Can you do that? And I think there are a couple of components that need to happen to make that experience real. By the way, if you're following, again, the bleeding edge on the generative AI stuff, this is what a lot of the auto GPT or auto agents are doing, where they're having these two systems talk to each other, but entirely automated, entirely AI. And that's the type of system I think that could solve that particular problem. What we're seeing at Zendesk AI is that's great, and that's a future that we should all prepare for. But if the business itself, if my airline doesn't have a system that has the customer context, that has the information about my business process and my knowledge and my options and access to the internal systems for doing things like changing seats, there's nothing for the Siri or the main agent to talk to in this case. So I think what we're going to see in the industry is we're going to see the CX portions of the business saying, okay, let's build up our AI interaction paradigms. Let's make sure our systems are connected. Let's make sure we've got a system that understands the customer interaction and understands the context. And that way, if a majority of the companies in the world that the consumers interact with daily had these systems at their disposal, then an automated agent like a Siri could go and connect to those things and get some work done. So I think again, I don't want to predict timelines on this stuff because I will always be wrong and I'm self-conscious about that. But like this is a possible future for us. This is no longer sci-fi.
Right. Yeah, like I said, I mean, I feel like we could be further along even now with Siri and Alexa, but I do feel a little bit like Apple and Amazon were like, all right, we launched it, it's good enough. We're going to move on and focus on other things, and it's just not a high priority for them per se.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think look, I feel like I'm the voice of CX leaders on this call with you, and I would just say like this is the plight of the CX teams, right? Because they want the budget to create these experiences. They want the investment to be able to enable, Siri to come talk to their AI system. And, they've been fighting for this type of investment in technology for years and years and years. I do think AI and generative AI is a catalyst for this. Customer service systems contain all the information you would ever want to know about how your customers feel about your product, your service, how you're doing in the market. The data is there. Your customers' words are sitting right there. And if we can pull insights from that with generative AI, if we can summarize that information, if we can bring that back to the business, then CX leaders can make the case for, hey, we need to be ready for the future types of human interactions. If we're basically all Siri, all Alexa, all the time, or all Bard, whatever Google's voice assistant is, like, hey Google, like, then we need the systems that are ready to talk to those in the future, and we need the investment now to go do those things.
Yeah. One of the things that kind of goes hand in hand with this, being a hot topic, is the kind of the trust and security angles on it. Now, and you touched on this a little bit, I think, when you were talking about how, for the foreseeable future, we need to have a human in the loop still. There still needs to be some verification as we learn to use the technology, and as we evolve the technology, we need to be verifying the answers. One of the issues I've pointed out a couple times on this podcast is that when it comes to content, you have someone goes out and says, hey, ChatGPT, write me an article about, whatever, and how to make a pizza. And ChatGPT will go out, scour the internet, find the answers, come back with a step-by-step process for you for how to make a pizza. But without verifying it, it's like maybe the steps are all wrong. And the thing is, people inherently trust it as long as the answer looks coherent, like it's in English, it sounds like it makes sense, seems authoritative. Most people will just accept it and they will publish it as is, which creates a downward spiral in terms of the data pool, because now next time ChatGPT goes to look for a recipe for pizza, it's going to look at its own misinformed recipe, and now we've poisoned the well, so to speak, on the data pool.
Yeah, I mean, I see the same concern. I see the same things happening. I think I take a little bit of solace in saying this is an identified problem in the world of generative AI, and the future will be made by the people who can solve it. In that, whether it's citing the source, whether it's providing accuracy, confidence scores, whether it's being honest about whether something being presented is fact or is generated, like kind of the example you said about like Satya Nadella said this, or is it Satya Nadella probably said something like this, or I could see Satya saying this. And so like these systems have to get better at doing this. And I think we're in a time right now where it's a race among companies to provide the best large language models. And best will start to be dictated by accuracy, trust of and confidence in the results. I think it is early days though, and I don't know how to solve this for the entire concept of AI across the industry, but I do think it's on the minds of every single person I talk to, and so I have a feeling we're going to get better and better about this. I think what we did at Zendesk is we said, look, if you're building customer experiences, we have some design principles for you on how you use AI. A lot of that is just in terms of privacy and security and compliance. Like AI is just like any other tool. We wouldn't send your sensitive data around the internet just because it's AI now versus a previous technology advancement. Vendors and CX teams and their internal teams they can't trade off privacy and security and compliance for the benefits of AI. We have to treat this technology like any other technology and make sure in this world where having access to customer data is a privilege, we use that information responsibly. So that sounds like a no-brainer, but I think there's been such a rush on AI stuff that I think we're at risk as a complete industry. We're at risk of throwing away some of the progress we've made in the last 10, 20 years on privacy, security, and compliance. I think transparency is another one. So if your system is using an AI, as a vendor, I feel like we are responsible to tell you that. So we have stuff that's powered by our own Zendesk AI, which is internal. It's built. It's our systems. We can tell you about those systems. We can tell you that these particular parts of the product use our systems. And then some of the stuff we build will be powered by OpenAI products, GPT-3, GPT-4. We should be transparent about where this information is coming from versus trying to obfuscate that. I already talked about this, but accuracy and confidence thresholds are critical. Making sure we choose our partners selectively. OpenAI has been a great company and they've been a great partner with us. But we need to continue to inspect that relationship, right? So I think there will be competition among AI providers and LLM providers on their trustworthiness and on their ethics. And so we need to continue to inspect those business relationships like we would for other people. And then finally, you mentioned that, I mentioned this earlier and then you brought it back up, but right now we're taking a human in the loop approach at Zendesk. Like AI has to make the customer experience better and it has to make the agent and admin experience better. Where this technology is for humans. It's not just so we can, facilitate the, robots take over the world scenario. It has to make human lives better. And so right now, I think there's a lot of stuff where we're being slightly conservative and saying, keep a human in the loop on this. Don't put generative responses in front of your customers unless they've been reviewed by a human or you've somehow built a system that can deliver a confidence level and an accuracy level to that prediction.
That makes sense. When you talked about kind of privacy and customer data and stuff, and that is obviously that's a huge concern for companies. You've been entrusted with this data. There are a myriad of compliance regulations you've got to comply with around the world in terms of handling that information. I have also said for a long time when it comes to things like privacy and like, again, I'm going to go back to the iPhone. It can do a lot, but what it can do is partly dependent on how willing you are to share. Like you have to turn on things like location sharing and give it access to things so that it can learn those, so that it can know. If your concern about privacy is such that you're like, well, no, I'm not turning on any of those features. That's fine. That's your prerogative. Just know that the trade-off for that is you don't get the convenience of these technological advantages. They require you to share. And so, as the consumer, you've got to pick and choose. I personally, I'm okay sharing my stuff with Apple. I'm not okay sharing my stuff with Google. I try not to do that. I'm sure they still have it all just because that's the nature of the world. But consciously, I don't try to share it. And I think when you're dealing with the customer experience angle on it, that definitely comes into play as well. It's like what you have access to as the customer service AI or agent is somewhat dependent on what have I opted into.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on the topic of sharing data with companies, I think I'm not going to say everybody's doing it right, but I think we've turned a corner in the last 3 to 5 years on visibility into, I am sharing my data with this company. They have some responsibility to me to tell me what data I've shared with them and what they're using. And so Google's a good example. You can go and ask them what they know about you, and they'll respond with some information. So I think we're turning a little bit of a corner there. I think what we talk about at Zendesk and what I talk about with my customers is like, your customer data is a privilege. They don't have to give it to you, just like you said. They don't, if they do give it to you, they expect a very high level of trust, and they expect value out of it. What am I getting out of giving you this data? And I think what I find, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say that's crucial, that part, because I do not participate personally in like the Walgreens or CVS like customer things, because they're always like, well, do you want to put your number in to get rewards? I'm like, I've yet to see a reward that I care about. It seems like you're holding this carrot out here, but you're not giving me anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it. It's a value exchange, and the power has shifted from you have no power as a customer to you have a lot of power as a customer to make those decisions, and there has to be an exchange of value for you to do that. I think we're on like at Zendesk, we work with 100,000 companies across the world, and not all of those companies, in fact, a vast majority of the companies do not have the sophistication of a Google or a Facebook or Walgreens or something like that, where they can say, okay, we're going to spin up a team of a few hundred people to to figure out exactly what data we're using of our customers. And so they rely on vendors like Zendesk. Like, I think a lot of this is going to be, a lot of the future of this for companies that are smaller than the largest companies in the world. There's going to be, do I trust my vendor that, they're doing good things and responsible things and treating my customer data as the, bar of gold that it is, of this precious resource that it is. We feel at Zendesk we've provided that level of trust. But again, I think with the industry's rush to AI, that's something we have to be careful of. Are all vendors doing this responsibly? Do all vendors hold trust, compliance, security, and safety at such a high regard? That's going to be a conversation that everyone's having in the CX world with their vendors and with their partners.
Yeah. Well, and like one quick aside, and then I'll do a question. But on some level, let's say I've got the number's probably like 100. Let's say I have 100 apps on my phone, and some percentage of those are accessing. I've given permission to access my data, and I have a level of trust, or I wouldn't have done that. So I expect that they're managing my data properly. Yeah. The thing is, it only takes one of them to not manage my data properly, and it actually undermines all the rest. So it's like once the data is compromised and it's out there on the dark web, then does it really matter that I'm like carefully monitoring my data with Apple? Because who cares? But so that's the quick aside. But I wanted to ask you guys. You guys just had you just held your customer event Relate recently.
Yep.
And I'm just curious, like what were kind of the primary topics of conversation? What are the key takeaways from that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think right now, topic of conversation wise, we just talked about it for a long time here, but AI is on the top of mind of every single customer I spoke with. We recently launched Zendesk AI at our customer event Relate, which includes a lot of the things I'm talking about. So our own Zendesk AI internal system that we've been building over the last 18 months that can accurately and confidently predict sentiment, language, intent of a customer. What is this customer trying to do? Also do some entity extraction, which we'll be launching later this year, but confidently get AI insights directly out of the customer service data because it's been trained on CX data, as well as our partnership with OpenAI, where we are, doing some of the core generative stuff like ticket summarization or tone shift of an agent's input, generative responses that get approved and reviewed by an agent. So it's an area that we're investing in, all those things I just spoke about. And it's an area that's on the minds of all of our customers. I did have a great conversation with a customer earlier this week about, what we just talked about, where they turned on Zendesk AI and they had a group of agents whose job it was to just triage customer service tickets. After turning on Zendesk AI, which is all super pre-trained, and it's not something that you need to train. It's not something that you need an IT or ML team. You turn it on and you start getting these predictions on your tickets, within a day, they were able to take that group, which is a small group, it's 1 or 2 agents, but they were to take that group of agents whose job it was to just triage tickets and move them up into the core customer service team to handle it live one-on-one in-person interactions with customers. So we're seeing these results. These things are happening. This has already been a productive wave of technological advancement. Whereas again, in the past, you might have seen some false starts, or we might have gotten the wheels locked up a little bit on moving AI forward. This seems very different, and the energy around this with our customers is just amazing.
Okay. So going forward, do you have any thoughts on how will Zendesk prioritize enhancing the AI capabilities, or what does the evolution of Zendesk AI look like over the we'll say over the near term?
Yeah, I mean, so I think what we'll see in the CX world specifically is just AI will just be part of every single moment of CX interaction. So from the minute a customer is, from before a customer even knows they want to talk to a company, we may have AI sort of proactively thinking about, okay, we need to reach out to this customer, we need to tell them, that their order has been delayed, or whatever the case may be. Proactive engagement on CX, all the way through a customer interacting with automations and a bot experience, through talking to an agent, through receiving their response, through sort of post-response care. Every single part of the customer lifecycle will be affected by AI. Every single part of the agent experience. So for instance, agents right now, when they take a customer service ticket, when they first receive an inbound messaging session from a customer, or an email from a customer, or a voice call from a customer, they spend a lot of time reading through the details, interacting with a customer to get some new details, looking into internal systems and third-party systems, and then crafting a response. I think a lot of that upfront stuff, all the way including crafting a response, can be done and automated with AI in the customer experience. And what the agent's job will be is to say, hey, we've prepared a response to this customer for you. Here's a summary of the customer information. Here's a summary of the interaction. Here's our expected response. Do you want to go over it, personalize it? Do you approve it? Do you not approve it? Is there something you should change? And the agent is more empowered to be a reviewer, to be the gatekeeper of human emotion and intelligence. And so the agent's job will go from a press these buttons here and do this search here to a review this interaction and tell us if we're delivering a great customer experience. So I think that's going to be a huge shift for the CX industry and for agents worldwide. And then I think there's a lot of the other thing that we talk about a lot. I haven't mentioned it yet on this, so I'm happy to just give it 30 seconds here, which is there's a lot of preventative care. So I talked about proactive, like, hey, your shipping's been delayed. We're going to let you know about that and give you some options. There's a lot of preventative stuff, which is, AI, like I said, we have all the interaction history in our CX systems. So AI can basically say, hey, judging from, the last 7 days of interactions, it looks like we may have a issue with this particular product, or we may have an issue with the quality of responses coming out of this particular service center, or around this particular topic of service, shipping, or whatever the case may be. And we can surface that to administrators and CX leaders, and even surface potential responses to that. So, hey, it's like, hey, if your agents had a quick knowledge base article or a quick reply that says something like this, we call them macros in Zendesk, but that said something like this, it would really help your efficiency, and it would help get answers to the customers faster. So doing preventative and iterative maintenance on your CX experiences is something that we think AI will help out with a lot. So just surfacing insights from all this CX data to the right people, not just customers, not just agents, but also to the CX leaders and administrators of the systems, I think will have a huge impact.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't even work in that arena, and I would agree. Like I a lot of the time when I am interacting with like a voice response. When I call and they've got their voice response system that is so it starts asking me questions. They want this computer to engage with me like a human being, and a lot of times it goes poorly. It doesn't understand what I'm saying. It directs me to the wrong thing. And in the back of my mind, I'm always like, I really hope somebody somewhere is analyzing all of this data, that someone is actually looking and saying, okay, Tony Bradley called, he asked this question, the response was completely irrelevant, and learning from that experience. That's the silver lining. The silver lining of my frustration is that I hope someone is learning from this experience.
Yeah. And CX leaders do, again, just let me be the voice of CX agents and CX leaders worldwide. Everybody cares. Like everybody I've ever met in the industry whose job it is to serve customers actually cares about the outcomes, but they deal with issues of scale and volume. And so the process you're describing right now, it's called quality monitoring, quality management inside the CX world. It actually typically consists of taking a random sampling and manually reviewing those by human quality monitors, quality administrators, and there are things that are missed. And so we can because of the scale of interactions in CX and because of the amount of people that work in a typical CX org, you can't check every response. This is where AI will be super powerful, because AI can check every response, and they can check it way faster than a human could, and it can check it twice a day, and they can recheck when it gets smarter, and it can surface these types of issues. So we're seeing AI be a huge just a huge improvement on the scale of change we can do within CX.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, I think random sampling makes sense. I mean, you're not going to review every single call, so it's like you take some random set, say, okay, well, let's just see how are we doing. But if I wanted to be more specific, if I was on that side of the fence, I would say, okay, just find me instances of profanity. Exactly. Because whether it's Apple reviewing what I say to Siri, or Amazon reviewing what I say to their voice response thing, the fourth time it asks me a dumb question, I'm liable to use some profanity. So if you just searched on that, you'd be like, all right, now I can narrow this down, and I can just find the ones where we pissed the customer off.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, in defense of CX teams everywhere, a lot of teams can do that. Like they can, in the past, like the technology we've had up to today was just about good enough to do that, to grab the worst cases of sentiment or profanity and surface those. What we're talking about changing going forward is doing that on a massive scale. There is a whole set of profanity just below the level of detectability that AI can detect and can surface. So it's just it's a super bright future. I think CX is going to get a deserved reinvigoration of investment and interest because of the power we can now apply using generative AI and these large language models.
Okay. Well, and like I said, I agree. I mean, despite my feelings on Siri or Alexa or, generative AI in general, I do feel like if I'm looking at something like a ChatGPT for creating content, or if I'm looking at something like, DALL-E for creating, artwork, imagery, those things are different. I feel like they're more nuanced, they're more complex. You're asking it to create. And I feel like what you're doing on the CX side is much more in the scope of what it is truly capable of now. Like you're not asking it to, like you referenced earlier, like you literally don't want it to, be creative. You want it to be able to reference, like, here's the knowledge base article. I can point you to exactly the thing that helps you, with this question. And I feel like, AI is definitely uniquely suited for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, what we're talking about right now is just that balance between, creativity and correctness. And I think the AI scales, with the GPT-3 and GPT-4, with DALL-E and these generative models, they started to really figure out creativity, which was always needed. Now we have to apply getting these things right. When you talk to LLM people about it, they say, look, we're talking about hallucinations. The AI is hallucinating answers to these questions. I think it's different than that, and I think it's a matter of sort of constricting the output to stuff we know is already correct, and letting the systems use the creativity to find the correct thing, for the
Right.
scenario. And so it's I don't if you ask me a question and I create an answer that sounds good and isn't right, I didn't hallucinate that. I just I generated it, and
I will say though, human customer service agents do that all the time. So in defense of AI, like that happens all the time, where like they give you an answer and you find out that answer is literally BS. They like literally just made something up to get you off the phone.
Yeah, it can be the case, and I think it's always about balance, and it's always about scale. So what gets the customer the best experience? It might be the right answer fast. It might be connection to an agent fast. It might be it's probably not a wrong answer, and so that's where generative AI has some hiccups. So I think it's a balance between when does automation and when do humans provide the best experience for a customer? That's what's going to be on the topic. That's going to be on the minds of all customer service leaders for the next 2 years.
All right. Well, I think that seems like a decent place to wrap up. So I want to thank you for joining me. I think it was a good conversation. I mean, I'm having a lot of fun conversations these days about generative AI, and I'm sure we will continue to have those conversations, in the coming months and years.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having us. It's been great, especially since our Zendesk user conference relate. I've been talking about this nonstop. I'm not getting tired of it. Like the opportunity here is so big that we better keep talking about it. Otherwise, the bots will be talking about it for us, frankly.
Right. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
I appreciate you investing your time to listen to the podcast, but I also invite you to engage on social media. Please go like our Facebook page and follow @TechSpective on Twitter and Instagram. You can feel free to let me know what you like, let me know what you don't like, let me know if you love it, let me know if it sucks, and let me know what products you'd like to see reviewed or what questions you'd like to see answered in future posts.